I'd like to talk a little bit about Neal Schon. Welcome back to another show. So, like I said, an FM station, we do all these different cover songs, and some of my favorites are the ones that we do by Journey. I think it's probably the most satisfying solos to play in songs to play, basically because of how musical and melodic they are. And then the solos are their own little world. I mean, there's like a whole outro in that song that's just around those same chord progressions as the whole song, basically. And it's just a great just move stuff around here. It's just a great song and great stuff to play. I think Neal in comes from, like, it's very similar to the Steve Lukather school. There are things I like better about each. God, I mean, Neal to me is just a lot more melodic when it comes to the solo. You can sing them more. Although Steve had a couple of solos that I feel are just as great. But not whole albums. Like, if you could take Journey Escape and Journey Frontiers and those records, both of them, especially Frontiers the way they intended it to be, which was with that song Only the Young on it. And there's another song that the record company pulled off that album. I'm trying to think what it was. I'll get back to it, but it would have been just as good an album as Escape, but the record company wanted to save some singles. I can't think of what that song was. It's definitely Only the Young would have been on that album, and it's another biggie that was great. All I can think of is Ask the Lonely. But I think that was on Raised on Radio. No, it might be Ask the Lonely. If it was on Raised on Radio, it's not Ask the Lonely, but I can't remember what it was. But anyways, a song to check out on that record is Troubled Child. I love that song. It's on Frontiers. It's completely underrated, and it's a great song. Anyways, let me just delve a little bit into this solo just so you can see what's going on here. So we have, like, this whole thing, an A minor, and then it's to the F major 7, to the D minor, to the E. I believe at one point it goes to the G, and the verses are different. One of them's back and forth. All I play in the verses is... And he plays that over the choruses, in and out. So then what we have, let me get to the solo. So the solo, it comes after the last chorus, and it's basically, you bend the D to the E here. And it just repeats that. And then it does it a second time, and on the second time it does a variable. It does a... And then right back to the original. Now, which is like what I consider the pre of the solo, and then it goes... Which is just... EGA, EGA, and then just once he's like, it's like a G, and the E is like real, like almost like glistened over. It's really like EGD, and then it's which takes us up to the 12th fret again. Again with that. And that ends sliding to the 17 with your first finger going. So that whole section here, well, that second half part goes. So from that whole, so the solo is that two sections of doing all that, the part I just showed you. Then now it's a half bend. Minor third bend. All right, so then we go to the 10th fret position. It's which ends us in the 12th fret position. So I'm going to play that slow one more time from that whole walk-up thing, and then we'll do the, and then the end. Actually, I'll just play the end first, and then we'll play everything together. So the end is just. And here I always just play, I think he just plays it with that G again, but I play it like a walk-up. It's like an alternating both parts. At the end, I was just noodling about because it's like I usually we keep going and going, and I just end up doing like the noodle like that he does live on the I think it's the Houston '81. So we're gonna do the whole solo here. Ready? Here we go. I hope that gives you an idea of how to play the outro solo to Who's Crying Now. It's a great song. And like I said, I can't say enough great things about Neal Schon. Again, I'd like to show you this guitar. This is a... It's made to look like an International Strat from Fender. I had it put together by Jim Casey in Stoughton, Mass. The body is a Warmouth body. This is a Fender Deluxe bridge. The pickups are DiMarzio Area 58, 58, and a Pro 54 in the bridge. And I have a treble bleed and a neck turn-on pickup for when I'm in the back positions. So I can turn on the neck and have this 7 positions instead of 5. It's got the smaller 50s style headstock but the bigger 60s logo. And I did that because I wanted it to look like a Dan Smith Strat. So the Dan Smith Strats, for those that don't know what that was around 1982 when they started bringing back the small headstock, when Dan Smith was the head of sales at Fender. They put the big logos on. They didn't actually go down to the small logo till '83, which was the Dan Smith 2s. And on the Dan Smith 2, there's no output jack here. In fact, the output jack is put here, so it only has the volume and tone and then an output jack. So this, I wanted it to make it look like my favorite of all Strats, which would be the International Strat and a Dan Smith all rolled into one. It's an ebony fingerboard. I bought a boat neck from Warmouth with the jumbo stainless steel frets, and then I had Wolf in Boston. Everybody knows who Wolf is. Works across from Berkeley. I had him reshape the neck to a harder V, and then I had him also, if you can see here, scallop the last four frets just so for the first and second string, and that's just because when you're playing and it's like I can grab it without having to think about it, especially if you're moving around on stage live. And there's a couple of songs when you stop playing and you're bending, if you have to hold that bend and it catches your finger weird, it's like your hand just cramps, and so now it's like just easy peasy, just grabs and so I like that aspect of it. Yeah. So, and again, if there's songs that people want me to post on here that they've seen my band do, or just songs that are good ideas, I'll put them up here as well. But yeah, so this is my favorite Strat now that I go to play. If you go out and see my band, you'll see me using this one. I use my black one a lot too, the one that I made look like a Gilmore Strat. This one just has like just a nice sound overall. I really like it, and it's versatile and it's funny. So I did a gig. We finished a gig. We were playing at Waxy O'Connor's in Foxborough, and we did our last gig there. It's not our favorite place to play. The sound there is terrible, and the staff isn't the happiest group of people going. But we bring a crowd, and they were like, "Oh, that couple over there thinks you're too loud." I'm like, "Hey, what about the 100 people we have standing in front of the stage? What do they think?" Like, that's who we brought. You guys have, whatever. So, anyways, we're not playing there. But some people came up to me and they were like, "How come you don't have a humbucker? You don't use a humbucker?" And I'm like, I've gotten over it. I don't really like the sound of humbuckers. I shouldn't say that. I don't like the sound of humbuckers going through the rig that I use for FM station, which is, I use a Hot Rod Deluxe, which is a 40-watt amp with a Celestion speaker. It's been modified, and the volume pots have been modified to audio pots. And I use a lot of pedals. I have a buffer and a compressor, and I use a buffer and a Fat Boost 3 from Full Tone, just to act as like a line driver. And then I have like so many different drives. I have a compressor, and I have the Timmy pedal as the last drive. And then I use like a slapback echo for a couple of songs. But I keep that's all that goes into the face of the amp. And then I have a small board that goes through the effects loop. And that has my Univibe, my phaser, my chorus, my delays and reverbs. But for some reason, the way I set it up, it doesn't like my humbuckers as much. Whereas, I have a dual rectifier, and I recently acquired a crank 100-watt head, a Revolution 1 Plus, and those love humbuckers. They sound great because it's much more organic sounding. For those that care, right now I'm playing a Fender Mustang 2, and how I have it is you can go USB into the computer and control it from the computer, and that's what I do. And then the program that I'm using to record it just takes it right off the computer. So it has a cabinet simulation and all that stuff. So, it sounds pretty good. It's like, as long as you're playing on the cleaner side and not the beyond the point of no return and overdrive, it's very easy to sound good. Because if you play well, you can pretty much sound good playing almost anything. I always... if you hear a guy that plays great, usually the tone is going to be pretty good as long as it's not super overdriven. When you get to I always think if someone has a real overdriven sound and they sound good, well then I'm curious as to what's going on. But as far as like on the cleaner side, where I tend to stay live. Like we're not doing like a lot of terribly overdriven stuff. I mean, I use a fuzz on Reeling in the Years just because I'm trying to emulate that sound. I do a lot of things where I'm trying to emulate the sound of what's on the record. And so, I mean, that's like our goal is to go out. We're a cover band, and I always feel like nobody wants to hear my thoughts on that song. They want to hear what the song sounds like. So if we're playing AC/DC, I'm going to play what Angus plays. And, you know, I always get a kick out of people who come up to me because I mean, I'll do a whole episode on my pedals, but you'll see. But people will say like, "Oh, I don't need pedals when I play." Yeah, you don't need an amp either because you're not gigging. You're not, no one's paying you to play in your room. But if you're going out there and you're gigging and you're doing serious work and you're getting hired by multiple bands and you have to go out and sound like 15 different guitar players in the course of a night, there's nothing wrong with having pedals as long as you know how to set it up and wire it and all that fun stuff. So recently I had for years and would always was a big proponent and supporter of the Wampler Pinnacle pedal, and I had it, and it wasn't doing what I needed it to do. It wasn't sounding. I wanted it for like the Neal Schon stuff, and it's supposed to be like the Eddie Van Halen Brown sound type pedal, and somebody had turned me on to an Angry Charlie and was selling it. And I plugged it in straight, played it, and it was like, oh, that's the sound I want. I mean, this thing does it all. So I put the Angry Charlie on my board, and I'd say I did about 5 gigs with it, and I was like, yeah, it doesn't sound as good as day one that I had it. And so then I started thinking, I have it in my board behind my well, I shut everything off, except I don't shut the buffer off. And so then I started thinking, well, maybe this pedal doesn't like low impedance. Maybe they made it, and which is probably what Wampler did too. It's set to be your guitar to be plugged right into. Which is a good idea if somebody is making pedals to make one that's designed to take low impedance, so when someone puts it behind their buffer and in their board where they want it, that it reacts the way you want it. Anyways, to make a short story long, I ended up taking that pedal, the Angry Charlie, and then also I have a full tone Secret Freak, which is supposed to be like if you want that Boston guitar sound, that heavy, rich, overdriven, mid-range boost. So I put those 2 pedals now very first on my board. So that's what I plug into. So the buffer's after and everything else is after. And so I tried it for the first time at Waxy's the other night. And it was great. I mean, it did exactly what I want. It did exactly what I thought it would do. It made the pedal sound like the first day I heard it when I plugged it straight in direct. And just it sounded like a Marshall. And if I can make a Fender sound like a Marshall and then go back to playing a Fender clean, I don't know who would be against pedals. One thing I always tell people is because, especially on the East, I don't really deal with it so much on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, everybody's real competitive. I don't need pedals. It's cheating. Whatever it is, it's like this competitive. And at the same time, it's like, they think like, oh, it's cheating. It's helping you play. Not really. I can play clean. I'll go up with an acoustic. I don't care. My thing is, I'm not using pedals for me. I'm using them for you. You want to hear what, you go out and you want to hear the record. You want to hear that song with a chorus and all that, all the sound that comes with it. You want to hear a lush sound. If a song has a raw, like when I play the AC/DC song, I got 1 pedal on. I got the Secret Freak pushing that mid-tone boast, making this thing sound like an SG through a Marshall. How can you complain? People are dancing, the place is going great. It's still not changing who I am as a player. I'm still going to make mistakes, whether I'm playing the 500 pedals or if I'm plugged in clean. I'm still going to play the same way I play. I mean, it's just, music is not a competition. It is it's the bottom line to the end result of trying to make music and make people happy. So, it's funny. I see people make posts on Facebook, local musicians, and they're like, "Oh, when people use pitch correction, that's cheating." You know what's cheating? Yeah. So I'll tell you what. You don't use it. Sing as pitchy as you do, and play to the 4 people that come to your gig. But if people are off a little bit and they got background singers half the time, because I'll tell you right now, I use it. So does my bass player. And so we're out there because we don't have, I don't have monitors. I can't hear a damn thing. We're up there singing in the dark. So we use pitch correction. So it sounds good. People are dancing. It doesn't stop people from having a good time. And I think, it's like, first of all, you can only use it a very little amount. It's not like you can, because otherwise you didn't start sounding like, like you're making a rap record. Start sounding like Rihanna. But I mean, the bottom line is everyone's out there. You're out there to make music and to play whatever your gig is. Now, if I'm out there, when I played with the Big Angry, I was out there using a dual rectifier amplifier with one delay pedal. And I would only use the delay during my solos. And if you watched that video of us playing, you can hear when the delay is on because the guitar sounds like it has a phaser, which is the whole reason why I stopped using the delay and don't use it that much, is because the parallel effects loop was causing phasing. So it sounds like I have a phaser on there, it sounds like a box logo phase 90, which I'm not complaining about, which sounds all right, but I don't want it. I eventually, when they started making series effects loop, I took it into the Hollywood store and I got my dual rectifier modded, and the effects loop turned into a series, so it didn't do that. But for the most part, I would go out with one pedal because the amp has 3 tones. There's a clean, there's a dirty, and there's a like the dirty orange channel, which is more like a 70s gain, and then a high gain. And that's all I needed was those 3 sounds. That's all I was using. I think at one point I bought a wah. That broke very early. That didn't make too many gigs. But again, you're out there and you're playing. It's whatever. When you're doing a cover gig, like I'm doing with FM, I'm out there trying to imitate, 15, 20 different guitar players for the course of the night, and I want it to sound like the records. I mean, that's what people get off on, So that's the whole thing about that. So, and I'll do a whole episode on my pedal board. I think I have like 20 pedals or 21 pedals on it. It's gotten pretty nuts. A lot of the different drives, and a lot of them, I keep the drives very low gain, and then I stack them because if I want I was using a clone for a while, and that I had to take off my board. I had a Matthews Effects True Bypass clone. Now it's in my box of unused pedals for the moment. What I found was that I can get a similar sound. Kind of like an in-between. I use the AC booster by Exotic Effects, and when I use that stacked with a Timmy, to me that sounds more like a real clone than the clone. At least the clone when I hear on records. I also have a Paisley drive, and that, when you stack the Paisley drive with the low gain setting with the Timmy, I mean, it's a much better sound than I can get out of just one clone pedal. So that's what I'm using. I'm stacking stuff. I use the Timmy as a solo boost. It adds a little bit of hair onto the sound and a little bit of volume, and I use that for soloing, and it works out great. I mean, every pedal reacts to the Timmy fantastic. And that's the goal of it, is that people like the way it sounds, and that it gives you that boost, but also gives you a little bit more hair on the tone, which I like, because I'm not using a lot of high gain. I mean, even here, I don't even know if whatever the gain is setting is here. That's probably as high gain as I use on the Angry Charlie. And I use it on 3 songs. That. Oh, that's sharp. But anyways, So that's like that's probably one of the highest gain sounds I use. I usually tend to be more on the clean side. There's a sound that I hear. Obviously, we all hear it in our heads what we want to hear, and then we try to chase that sound. But for the most part, that's what I do. So I will be end up doing a show on all my pedals, and that'll be cool because I think you'll be able to see. And maybe I'll even do it on the Hot Rod Deluxe that I have. Yeah, and I got a couple of acoustic ideas that I want to show. Someone had a suggestion that I do a Van Morrison song that I actually used to do solo, called "Someone Like You." I think I'll do that song. But yeah, so anyways, this is my favorite now, my new favorite Strat. Also, I forgot to mention the nut width here is 1 3/4, which I like because it's nice and wide, and it's just, it feels good. What can you say, you know? Like I said, we talked about like tone wood and all that nonsense, but when a guitar feels good, it feels good. Now, it's funny, somebody came up to me after the gig, and I handed him my guitar, and he was like, "Oh, this is a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be." And I'm like, I don't know if it's heavier. You know, you can't obviously tell when you hear the sound what the weight is. You know, I'd love for somebody to strum a chord and then people start guessing the weight on the guitar, you know. Oh, yeah, the tone. It's the tone woods. But anyways, you can't tell. But it's it feels great. The action's set up great. Jim Casey did a great job piecing it together. Warmouth does a great job making the parts. Wolf, you did awesome doing the back and neck shape. It's like my favorite. And these small scallops just down here for these last four just feel great. And anyways, I just wanted to get another video up and have do something on Neal Schon. I know Holmesy is thinking to himself, where the hell's the Neal Schon stuff? Well, here it is. Anyways, I'm out of here. Very good.